and welcome. I am going to be showing you how to make your very own cloth bound book. So we're going to learn sort of the basics of bookbinding. You're going to wrap the cover yourself and it's all going to come together in a very lovely book. Let's begin, shall we? So if you are watching this because you have bought one of my kits, thank you very much. If you haven't bought one of my kits, please head to the description and have a look. So to make a cloth bound book, you should have the fabric that goes on the outside of your book. You should also have some thin scrap cotton, preferably white. I guess it doesn't really matter, it won't be visible at the end, but I just use white scrap. You should have enough paper to make the pages of your book. I've got 16 sheets and that will make a 32-page book, and that's how thick this one is. So it's not very thick, so if you'd like to make it thicker, feel free. You should have glue, scissors, a ruler, a paintbrush, needle and thread, threader to help you out, some bulldog clips, tape and cloth tape for the binding. That is this part here, and that's self-adhesive. You should also have some grey board. If you've got my kit, it's pre-cut apart from your spine, and you need to make sure that that is wider than how your final pages are going to be, because there needs to be some overlap on the edge. Okay, so but we'll get to the details of that. So once you've got all those things in front of you, we can begin. Now, the first thing that you're going to do to start is fold all of your sheets of paper in half. So however big you want your book to be, you want your paper to start off being twice that size. So this is A5 paper, which means it makes A6 pages in the book. If you started with A4 pages, you'd make an A5 book. So you're going to fold them in half, nice and neat, and you're going to do however many you want. And you can use the ruler to sort of keep it neat if you like. I like to match up the edges like that, and then you can sort of just use the ruler to squash it down and get a nice crisp edge there. Very nice. So you can do that. And I'm folding 16, as I said. So once you folded the first 4, I want you to open them one by one and slot them inside of each other. So then you have got 4 pages all resting inside of each other like that. And I'm going to do that 3 more times. So this is what's called a cell, and I want to make 4 cells in total. So each cell has got 4 pages and I'm going to make 4 cells. So there's 1. Now I'll make 3 more. Okay, so there is 4 cells. So now I'm going to open up each of these cells to the middle page, and I'm going to mark 4 marks across them. So you'll need a pencil now, or you can use a pen, but just make a really tiny mark. So I'm going to go 2 centimeters from the edge, each edge. So this is down that middle crease that you're making those marks. And then from those 2 centimeter ones, I'm going to go 3 centimeters in from there, from each of them. And I'm going to do that on each book, so it looks something like that. And you're going to do that on each of the middle of the cells. Right, now you are going to want to use your needle, and you're just going to pre-pierce a hole in each mark that you've made. Now you can do it like dangerously like me, or you can put a bit of cardboard underneath yourself or something, and you're just going to make that hole, minding your fingers in every mark that you've made. And this is just going to make it a lot easier in a second when we come to sewing it up. Now don't be scared by the fact that we're going to sew it up, especially if you're not a sewer. This is super simple. It's literally just a basic running stitch really, just in and out. And also the thing to note is when you are doing this, make sure that your pages are nice and neat, because otherwise you're going to have skew width holes. This is also why you don't want to put too many pages per cell. So I'm going through 4 pages here, and you don't want too many more, because otherwise it will be hard to get your needle through. You can maybe go up to 6, it all depends on the thickness of the paper that you're using. For this paper, standard paper, I'd say 4 to 6. 6 you might struggle to start pushing it through. Right, so once they're pierced, then we can thread up our needle. So you're going to want to cut a length of cotton that is the length of your cells times 4, because you've got 4 cells, and then just a little bit extra, so that's 4, and then I'll just do a fist, and then we know that's definitely enough. And then we're going to thread the needle. Needles used in bookbinding generally have quite small holes, because you don't want to make that hole down your spine any bigger than it needs to be. So it may be difficult to thread, but in my kits, that's why I've got a needle threader. So all you do with the needle threader is put that through the hole, and that's usually much easier. And then you just thread through the threader's hole and pull it back through. And you've threaded it, okay? So it's quite long, so I'm going to pull that tail down a little bit, and then we're going to get ready to sew the first one. So I'm going to go in the first hole from the outside in. Okay, make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, I'm going to pull that through, but not all the way. And before I get to the end, I'm going to leave a tail that's roughly about that, and I'm going to take that to the back of the cell. And that's going to keep hold of that. We don't want to knot it, because we're going to come back to it. So then you've come up there. All you're going to do then is go down through the second one. Pull it nice and tight. And then, can you guess what we're going to do now? We're going to come up from the outside through that next one. So, keeping it nice and tight, because this is going to literally hold the book together, hold all the pages in, so you don't want them flapping around. So we pull that nice and tight, and then guess what? We're going down through that one, and that's your first cell. So close that now, and then you're going to bring in your second cell. You're going to place it right next to it. Make sure those holes line up with each other. Then use your clips. So making sure it's nice and lined up, everything marries up nicely there. We are going to clip those cells together. Now I'm leaving this page free so we can get in and out. But you just want to clip it like that, so you know that they're secure. So now we've come out of that last hole, and we're going to go into the adjacent hole of the next cell. And again, pull it nice and tight. And then we're just going to work our way down the cell the same as we did before. So coming through the next one, out the back of the book again, going down the third one, back into the middle of the cell, pulling it tight all the time, and then back out. So when we come back down to the end, what I like to do is just free this tail from the tape and tie it on to that thread. Just one knot is fine, just keeps it a bit more secure. Put that back under the tape then. And then with our working piece, you guessed it, we're going to add another cell. So you want to take your clips off, get another one, marry those dots up again, and we're going to clip in place. So we are going down into the cell. This is why as well it always needs to be an even number of cells that you use. So I've done 4 cells, you could do 6 cells, 8 cells, 10 cells, but always make sure it's an even number, because we're going up this one now, and the next one we add will be going back down, and then we'll tie both of the end threads together, and that's really important. So therefore it needs to be an even number, so you always end up back at the start. So up we go, nice and tight, across there, into the middle, nice and tight, up there. And once I get up here, we've not got anything to tie it to, so what I do is slide it underneath the stitch from the previous two cells. It may be hard to then try and get your needle back out from the middle, but persevere. And that just gives that a bit of extra security. Then it's time for the last one. So same thing again, take your clips off, marry up those cells. Clip us back together. And then we're going back down. So into that hole, pull it nice and tight, across, down, nice and tight, and back up, nice and tight. And that's how much spare I've ended up with, so we was very safe there. Now you're going to want to release that from your tape again, and you're going to very nice and tightly, and in fact I'm going to clip all the cells of the book together at the bottom there, just to keep it a bit easier to keep hold of. And you are going to tie a double knot this time, keeping all of those cells together. And there we go. Then you can just trip your ends, but just leave them with a bit of a tail. That's how long I've left them. We can sort those out in a second. So what I'm going to do now is move this clip as well and just clip all of the pages. And then this is where you're going to use your glue for the first time. So I'm just going to put a bit on this card. You don't need a lot for this. Got a little smidge in there. And then using your brush, just get a little bit on your brush there. You are going to paint this down the spine. Now I suggest that you hold it tight. You've got your clips at either end, and I want you to hold it tight in the middle as well, because you're going to brush it along the spine. And really, you don't want any of this glue to actually go down between the cells. You only want it coating the spine itself. So just a little bit at a time. You don't have to go all the way to the edges either, but close enough. Make sure you at least go from first stitch to last stitch. And then here I'm going to trap in my threads from earlier, just by sort of capturing them with the glue. That takes care of those. So as I say, just nice and thin, and just keep it pressed together. Right, so I'm going to rest that on that bit of scrap paper for a second, and I'm just going to cut my piece of scrap fabric. Now I want it to go from the first stitch to the third stitch. So I'm just going to wing it by holding it there. And you just want it about 4 centimetres wide. It doesn't have to be perfect because it is going to be hidden. So that's the size of my scrap fabric. It's going to go across there and around the front. So I am going to add a bit of glue. I'm going to lay out a bit of scrap paper, and I'm going to glue directly onto the fabric. Put a bit more on my scrap. And again, you don't want to use too much because you're just going to saturate your book. But you want to just try and make sure you've gone to all the edges and the middle. So it's a bit faffy, but persevere. Try not to get glue all over your hands, as I do. Okay. So it's not perfect, but it's going to do the job. So all we do then is we're going to lay it on the spine first, straighten it out, and then we're just going to wrap it down the sides of our book there, like that. So your hands may get a bit sticky through this because it may come through the fabric a little bit, but that is okay as long as it's doing the job. So smooth out any creases so it sits nice and flat. Okay, And now what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside. I'm going to wrap it in this scrap paper. Just doing that to protect, stop getting glue on anything. And we're just going to stack it under some heavy books just to keep it nice and flat, because as you may know, when you glue things it can sort of ripple, so we want it to dry nice and flat. So I'm going to put that there and put a heavy book on it. And that's the cells done. So now we're going to do the cover. So you just need 2 pieces of grey board that are going to be bigger than the span of paper. So I've cut mine out. An easy way to do this would be to get one of your sheets that you used, fold it in half and just lay it on. And as you can see there is a gap all around. It only needs to have a gap on 3 sides. One of the long edges, it's going to be flush, so you can measure it that way. So there we go, I've got my 2 pieces. We've not cut out the spine yet because we're going to come back to that. But for now, we're going to lay these on our cover piece of fabric and cut that out. So let's put mine here. And again, these need to have an overlap on 3 sides. So we might as well just marry them up in the middle there. And then you want to have about 3 centimetres of an overlap. So I need a bit more there. Actually, probably 2 centimetres is fine. So I have about 2 centimetres of overlap, and here on this bottom edge, I'm just going to mark where that is. This doesn't have to be super neat because these raw edges are going to be hidden inside of your book. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is cut around where I've marked there, and that was my middle. So I'm going to cut that line down so we've got 2 separate pieces. Okay. And then on my piece of fabric, I've got some white edges. Now I didn't include those white edges in my 2 centimetre gap, so I'm going to cut them off. And I could have included them because in theory they will be hidden, but you might see a little bit of them on the inside cover, so I'm going to chop them off and not count them. Again, not being too neat because ideally this is going to be hidden. And then I'm just going to cut down that middle line there, and we will check that we've not made some fatal mistake somewhere and that these still make sense. So marry that up to that edge. Yeah, I've got an overlap on all the sides, so that's going to be perfect. Now these are a little bit creased, you can iron them, however once you get them onto your book it should iron itself out, but if you are after perfection then by all means iron. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get another piece of scrap paper because we are now using a bit more glue. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on each one. Now you don't have to start with a lot because we can always add more, and you really don't need a lot. And then I'm going to use the end of the ruler to sort of just spread it onto the board. And you want to really go edge to edge, which is why the ruler is good for this, and it gets it nice and flat too. You really want it spread nice and evenly across there, so every part of this grey board is covered in a light layer of glue. So it takes a bit of persistence, making sure that you've covered every section. And now, to be honest, before that goes dry, I'm not going to do the next one yet because that'll be fine for a sec. And what you want to do is make sure it's nice and flat. Get your piece of fabric and you want to lay it on there, flush to one edge, as I said, with equal overlap at the top and the bottom there. So you don't have to measure it to be exact, you can do this by eye. And then you just want to press it down, and then we can use the clean end of the ruler to just gently, not too harsh, otherwise it causes ripples like that, but just sort of encourage the fabric to really attach there to the surface. Okay, then I'm gonna do the other one of these and I'm gonna let them both dry under the stack of books. Right, and that is my second one done. And you can see how those creases now are not visible. So happy days. Now in a second I'm going to let these dry under the stack of books as well, but first we're going to sort out our overlaps. So using my scrap paper again and trying not to lay any of the glue that I've already got on there, we're going to come back to the brush and the glue. So before we glue again, we're going to trim the corners at a 45-degree angle, about 0.5 centimetre away from the corner. You don't want to go right to the corner because then your grey board might show on your final book. So we do that on both. Okay, then we're coming back to our brush with glue. So we've got fabric side face down and we're going to apply the glue. We're going to apply the glue to the short edges of the fabric first. Just brush it on and you're going to fold over that short edge and you're going to pull it nice and tight so we get a nice crisp edge on that grey board. Just sort of pull it down. See, so we've got, look at that from the front, it's looking lovely already. Nice and flat. Right, I'm going to do that on this side and on those two. Okay, so I've got both of those done. Looking nice and crisp from the front there. So now we're going to do the long edge, and this is going to be a little bit more tricky, but still super fun. Right, so first things first is we are going to specifically add glue down this corner line. Like that on both sides. And then we're going to apply it down the edge as before. So then I'm going to put a bit on the grey board as well to make this easier. All we're going to do is, as we did before, I'm going to secure it in the middle first. And then with these corners, you just want to sort of push it inwards and then stick it down. Sort of like wrapping a present. So you get a little corner crease neatly like that. Glue down. And that is that. Good to go. So do that again on this one and then just get those underneath that stack of books and leave everything to dry. Okay, so now we are ready to start bringing it all together. So pull all of our pieces out from under our books. We have got 2 cover pieces. We have got a set of cells that are nice and glued. And all we need now is a spine and to attach the whole thing together with our spine tape. So what you're going to do is sandwich your cells in between your 2 covers, like so. And that edge goes right up to the cover edges. And then all we're going to do, so you'll have a scrap piece of grey board that should be big enough. I am going to line that up to that edge and then I'm going to draw around it because your spine, just want to make sure you hold it tight. So to be fair, you may want to clip it while you do this. So your spine needs to be the width of the cells and the width of the thickness of the cover, if that makes sense. It needs to cover that whole cross section. So I'm going to line it up and I'm going to draw down the middle there and it goes up to there. So now I can cut that out and that should be the thickness of our book. So you want to take care to make it as straight as you can, which is tricky on grey board. There we go. So that now should be the thickness of my book. Unclip these now. Right, now see, I actually think it's a little bit thicker, but not by much. So I'm going to really carefully, see that? It's about 2 mil, 3 mil. So I'm going to really carefully just go down one edge, take that much off. Now, of course, you don't have to draw around it. If you think it's easier to measure it draw that measured shape, you can do that. So you just look at your cross section and say that's exactly a centimetre across there. So in theory, yeah, that's now, so I've done that by eye. That is now 1 centimetre wide of a spine. So that should fit. It's looking a bit narrow at that end compared to that end, so I'll just sort of even it up. I'm sure you will take more care in measuring yours. Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, that's looking a lot better now. I'm holding it a bit skew with, but that is about that width. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our cloth tape, and it wants to be the length of your book plus a little bit extra each side. This one's quite long, so I'm going to trim it so there's about that much extra from each side. Then what we're going to do is fold it in half long ways, and you want to get this as accurate as possible because this is going to tell us where the middle is, and therefore we'll be able to place it straight on the book. So you want to make a crease on it. You want to fully fold it and make a crease. Don't worry, the crease will not be visible on the finished book. So then, now this is where it gets a little bit faffy. You want to peel off the backing paper and lay the tape just on your work surface in front of you, and try not to stick to it. And that's why it's faffy. There we go. Get your spine, and you want your spine to be central to that middle crease that we've made, and that's why we've made it. And you want to leave a gap at the top and the bottom. So I think that I've got that straight down the middle there. In come our cover pieces. You don't need to worry about your cells just yet. And you're going to lay these next to the spine, and they want to have the top of the cover matching up to the top of the spine, bottom of the cover matching up to the bottom of the spine, exactly, because otherwise you're going to have a skew with book. So you also want to leave a little gap. So what I do is lay it next to it, top and bottom's matching up, and then lay it down. And that leaves you with the gap that you need. So stand it up next to it, and that's a good way to know then as well that it does actually match the top and the bottom. Then lay it down. Smooth that flat so it looks like that, and as you can see it folds nicely. If we'd have put those flush to each other, it wouldn't fold. That gives it the space to close. Okay, and as you can see, you can't see that crease now. So then all I'm going to do is cut down the tape. I'm not going to go all the way to the grey board, but close enough. And I'm lining these cuts up where the gaps in the spine are, because then all we're going to do is fold it on. And again, those gaps just give it a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to folding it. So just make sure they are nice and flat, and then we can turn it over and make sure we're fully stuck on that side too. See, we're getting there now, aren't we? It's coming together. Now we need our glue back, because we are going to attach the pages into the book. This is going to be covered. So what you're going to do is place that in the middle, and you're going to glue the back page, and you're going to squish it down to that side. So let me get my glue. Now this is the very last step. So we don't want loads, but you do want to cover the whole page. So you may find it useful to use your ruler again to spread it. I'm going to get some on here. You probably want to use your brush to do this fabric part, because your ruler's probably going to get a bit frayed. So right to the edges, and then you can do a little bit in the middle, but you don't have to cover the whole middle, to be fair. Just make sure that those edges are encompassed, because we don't want them pulling back. And then I'm also going to put some down the spine as well. Okay, and then as I said, lay that spine in the middle and drop that back page onto your book. And as you can see, mine has got some creases, so as I put it down, I'm going to just sort of tease those out, and that's why you don't want a lot of glue, because you're going to get more creases the more glue there is, because it causes it to ripple. So get that nice and flat. There we go. I'm going to put this back under our books when we're finished, so it will flatten out a bit more then as well. So that's one side, so we can close it to make sure it's really nice and snug. You can see it coming together. Then we're going to do the same on this side, and that is a bit faffy because, as we know, we've already got that one done. We're going to do the same again. I'm going to add a bit more at the spine from this side. You can brush it directly onto the grey board for the spine, actually. And then, as before, a bit on the fabric edge, and then just round the edges. Make sure it goes edge to edge. Then what I do is stand it up, tease that page out, flatten it down like that, and then, as before, just squash out any creases, close it, and there we have one finished book. So you can test that you've glued it properly by going like that. Beautiful. And then just leave that to dry under your stack of books and it'll come out nice and crisp. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you've now got a beautiful handmade book. As I said, you can use any kind of paper you want. You can do it any size you want, really. You could do square pages. You just need to make sure that your starting paper is double the size that you want, so you can fold it in half to make your cells. And that is how it's done. Beautiful. So yeah, as I say, just squash them under books to keep them dry, keep them nice and flat as they dry, and then you're good to go. Let me know what you'd like to see from me in the future, and as always, my website's there if you want to have a look at other kits and things I do. I've also got a flower press kit that's just come out at the minute. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.